Welcome to Liner Notes. My name is David Bixler. Heads up that due to COVID-19, this interview is recorded remotely. It might not be the same quality as if recorded in a studio. Tenor saxophonist Todd Williams has a new record out with his trio, entitled Introducing the Quartet Trio. In this episode of Liner Notes, we talk about the music, and he reveals the reason behind the name of the group. Todd Williams.
We're here, man.
We are here. And we've got some exciting news. New record out. Actually drops today. It's today, May 26th.
May the 26th?
May 26th. And it's entitled Introducing the Quartet Trio.
That's right.
And you're also debuting the music at Smalls.
At Smalls tonight?
Yeah. Has the music been performed other than recording it, rehearsing it?
No. We recorded back in December. And it has been sort of locked tight. We haven't been actually out playing it, but yeah, we're going to premiere tonight and release it all at the same time. And we've been looking forward to it. And the way it all evolved was kind of a funny scenario. Robert Rucker, he just called me one day last year in 2021, and he says, "Man, we got to record, and I just want to hit with no chord changes. Let's just hit." And I said to him, well, actually, I got some tunes that I just wrote, and they kind of fit that description. They're simpler tunes, short form tunes, really ideal for a trio because there's a lot of wide open space, a lot of, you can reinterpret the harmony, you can fill gaps. And then you can be really creative to create effects that are normally part of other instrumentation. You can fill it in. So hence the name, the Quartet Trio. I know that's...
I was wondering. Can you, I want to just stop you there and, tell me how you're thinking about that. Like what kind of effects, orchestration, or devices are you thinking about?
Okay, so like for instance, when we have a quartet, we have very traditional roles. The piano player is the comper, and then the drummer is the timekeeper, and the bass is sort of the master timekeeper, but in a very more subtle way. Whereas with a trio, like say for instance, you can actually, if you have that much more space, the drummer has to sort of create a timbre that you can play on, and it's more than just keeping the time. It's more of like, well, what fabric can I lay out there that will actually kind of give the listener like the full picture of what we're trying to create, because you're trying to create sort of orchestrations that are not there. And so like for instance, there's one tune that we're going to do that has it's sort of like an ostinato pattern that the bass player plays. And then I have like a second ostinato pattern. And then on the drums, he's doing more just filling in and playing cymbals, but he's not necessarily doing so much really hard timekeeping because the bass already has an ostinato. And then I have an ostinato, and then we go into the melody after that. That's called the short track shuffle. And so you'll hear that as one of the tunes. But so, yeah, I think you play differently when you have to play differently, as opposed to just kind of falling in the traditional roles and saying, okay, Miles played it this way, Train played it this way, and, I'm going to play it that way, So you kind of try to think of like, what could I do to draw in the full picture?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
When he hit you about wanting to record, and you said you had these tunes, had you envisioned them in a trio?
Honestly, no. I was actually thinking that it was going to be a quartet, to be honest with you. I was thinking that I would have guitar, bass, drums, and myself. And then after, when he called me, he says, "Yeah, man, I got this friend named Yuma Takagi, and Yuma Takagi, he's great. You got to hear him play. Have you ever heard him?" I said, "No, I haven't heard him play." And he had just moved to New York. And I thought to myself, Actually, that's really great. We had like this synergy of uh, like excitement, because and I hadn't recorded in a long time, and neither has Robert or Yuma. And so Yuma had just moved to New York, and he was just devouring material. He and Robert had been practicing together, and I was feeling that same type of energy to say, hey man, we just got to do it. And we didn't really even know how we were going to record it. In fact, we were originally just going to record it in my basement on some equipment that I have, like some amateur audio stuff. And then a friend of mine who heard about it, Josh Eisenhardt, he's a really great music recording engineer, and but he does a lot of other things. He works at the university where I teach, and he caught wind of it. He says, "Hey, man, I tell you what, I'll bring my equipment to your house, or you guys can just come over to the studio. I've got this whole studio space. You guys can come over, and we'll just do it." And so then Josh had that same kind of energy. Like he was like totally psyched about it, and he just said, "Let's just do this thing, man." And so we got the sessions planned, and Robert and Yuma bought a ticket to Indianapolis, and we just recorded that thing.
Okay.
So
You just knock it out in one day?
it was Friday, Saturday, and a Sunday.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. All right. And
So
did
3 day.
not knowing Yuma, you felt the vibe right
Oh
away when you
yeah, I
jumped
knew.
in?
Yeah, I knew what Robert like. Robert, he's very straightforward, and like if something is not really swinging or whatever, he wouldn't like it. So I knew it was going to sound good. So and then with Yuma, just my biggest dilemma was, okay, I have to find a really good bass for him to play.
Oh, yeah, of course.
So him traveling to Indianapolis. And so at my university, we have an orchestra, and I was checking out they have a bunch of different double basses, and I was like, man, which one is actually set up more for jazz? So I found one, and I said, well, I hope this works, because I don't know what kind of setup he likes to play on, but this is going to have to be it. And I played it myself. I said, well, this sounds good. So whether it's the right fit or not, I know it sounds good. So we did it. And Josh hooked up all sorts of microphones. He had multiple microphones on my saxophone, just to test out like the different like types of sound. He's got a lot of experience with processors and like all the stuff that engineers should know about, but he's quite experienced. So off we went. And then we gave him like some models of the sound, like we modeled one of Joe Henderson's recording, not Joe Henderson, Joe Lovano's recordings. And then I think Robert may have given him something else, but we said we kind of wanted to have like a real trio kind of sound, uh, not overly processed, really just natural sound, acoustic sound. And so he said, okay, yeah, I think I hear what you're talking about. And he did it.
And I think that's definitely the vibe there. You alluded that you've known and played with Robert for a number of years. Can you unpack that a
Yeah,
little bit?
well,
Where would you
actually,
guys where were you playing?
yeah, where we met actually was through Manhattan School of Music, because at a certain point in my career, I decided to go back and I got a degree in composition at Manhattan School of Music, which was basically me finishing my undergrad degree. And when I was there, I met Robert, and he says, "Yeah, man, I was roommates with Wycliffe Gordon, man, and you were there in the band with Winston and those guys." And um, and so we just kind of struck up a rapport. And then, of course, we had the obligatory recitals. We played on each other's recitals and all of that. And we always had a friendship over the years, where we talked about a lot of different things. Him moving to New York for the first time, how big of a shock that was.
Where's he from?
He's originally from Florida,
Uh-huh.
and he went to Florida State, and he was there during the time when Marcus Roberts was recruiting all these musicians, and Scotty Barnhart was there, and of course Wycliffe was there, and a whole bunch of Stephen Riley was there. Uh, a lot of really great musicians who are out there now who got their start in that group. So that's where he was coming from, and so I thought to myself, wow, okay, this guy, we kind of have a lot of similar uh, things that we like in music, So we met around that time, and then we just kind of every now and again, kept in touch. And he would always say, "Hey, what are you doing, man? This is what I'm doing," And I found out later that he was doing some teaching over in Jersey, and so of course I've been doing a lot of teaching and stuff at the university, and so yeah, that's how we met. And when he was so enthusiastic about Yuma's playing, I said, "Yeah, well, bring him along. Let's do it."
Yeah. It's nice when
So,
you can, you have the rapport with someone that you can just trust.
oh
Like,
yeah,
this
yeah,
cat's
yeah,
coming here. I know it's going to be all right.
yeah. That's right. That's right.
Sight unheard, I guess would be the
Yeah,
expression. Cool. Um, I didn't know you got your degree in composition. Was that
that's
just like
right.
classical composition?
No, okay, so that was jazz commercial composition at Manhattan School of Music, and at the time when I got that degree, I was actually a staff writer at Times Square Church, and we had like 130 voice choir, and I used to write for the choir every week, and I wrote all these.
Every week.
Yeah, I
Well,
wrote
you
wrote
going back on that.
Yeah. And well, we had in addition to the choir, we had a band. And so the idea was that okay, the band needs to play something new for the offertory every week. And it wasn't just me. There are two other guys too who are professional. They're actually jazz musicians. Mark Sturbank, who used to play with Harry Connick, and another guy named Edwin Parker. He is a really accomplished tenor sax guy. Went to the Eastman School of Music, and so we all had really similar backgrounds, and we all really like arranging, and we like Duke's music, we like Basie, and so we would arrange these hymns for the offertory at the church, and it was a great success. We'd play there at the church, but then we would do performances around the city, and we'd do these street outreaches where we would actually play as a band out on the street. We'd play in Central Park and Marcus Garvey Park, and all over the place, so. It's kind of a funny thing, I was actually a lot of people think that, when I kind of took a break from playing jazz, that I wasn't really like playing publicly, but I was playing publicly all the time, and playing in these different groups from the church and stuff. But yeah, that was a great time, and so the composition part came from me working there, where every week I was writing for vocal music. I was doing stuff for our sort of mini big band. I guess it was probably like 11, 12 people in most cases, and so that actually gave me a lot of really practical experience. And then when I majored in composition, it was jazz commercial composition, and at the time I was studying with Dave Berger, yeah, and so that was a great experience, and just learn how, like, the way that he arranges, um, and just how he really, in a very in-depth way, really understood Duke's music, and was able to like just transcribe that stuff like nobody's business. So that was a great experience. And then
Did that have like a immediate impact on what you were writing,
oh yeah,
at the church, or just,
totally.
for your own groups
Yeah,
and
I
jazz
would
stuff?
I would be writing stuff for the band at the church, and I'd bring it in for my lessons, and we'd work on it, and so it was really kind of a great connection, because I remember even from my original undergrad days when I first started college, was that I had an experience where I studied with Rayburn Wright, who Dave Berger actually studied with him.
Oh,
And then I
okay.
got to study with Dave. So it's sort of a funny thing. I didn't really think about the connection that much at the time, but later on, I started thinking to myself, "Wow, I got it straight from the source." Rayburn Wright was the main writer for Radio City Music Hall. So if there ever was a New York arranger who was very prolific, that would have been Rayburn Wright. And then to study with both him and Dave Berger, I was like, "Wow, this is great." And so yeah, I wrote a lot of pieces for the Times Square Church choir and for the band. And then at one point, some of my compositions actually got a little traction, and one of them sort of became almost like the anthem for the church. They would sing this piece, and it's on YouTube now. You can listen to it. It's called "We Proclaim Him," and other people began to sing it. At one point, I remember seeing a Ukrainian group out in California singing it. Some choral group in Harvard was singing it. Another group was using it for like sort of like an interpretive mime in Italy.
Wow.
Yeah, it was like a lot of different experiences that came from that as a composer, and so. I like this idea of composing, but I like playing, and the way I think of playing, I think of improvising as composing. So when I'm playing, I'm thinking about how to really make melodies work. As opposed to a technique. I'm just thinking about, well, how can I create a dynamic, maintain that dynamic, and then resolve it in a way that makes sense so the rest of the band can hear. And so on this particular recording, I felt like that was sort of my big challenge, is that to try to make melodic phrases that really resolve in a way where the two rhythm section players could actually hear where I was going, and then they could resolve it together, as opposed to me having a set of chord changes, which these tunes don't have that, but to actually have something in something that I played that, okay, we'll end a phrase here. It might be a 8.5 bar phrase. It might be a 9 bar phrase, but that if we could play together in a way that just sounds like a cohesive group, then my goals would have been met, so.
With the tune, like with an 8-bar phrase, 9-bar phrase, does it change? Can it change from time to time, or is it set?
Oh yeah,
or,
no.
Okay.
I kind of wanted it to be so that there was no predictable form on some of these tunes. Some of them do have a predictable form. In fact, a couple of them we don't even solo on. We just literally just play the melody, So, but for the ones that do have solos on them, I kind of wanted it to be open, and I wanted us to just really just kind of feel where the phrase is, and in the same way dialogue is, like when you speak to somebody, you don't really know exactly what they're going to say or how they're going to resolve it, but then you think of something, and then you have a natural response in conversation. So yeah, that's where we were going with this. And so I can't really say that I really thought of these tunes, and as in another conversation you and I were having earlier, I kind of heard the ideas for these tunes literally, sort of in that twilight moment when you're like halfway waking up in the morning. Like I sometimes hear melodies at that time, and it sounds very much like, kind of a put on, but it actually is true. Like when I wake up in the morning, I actually hear melodies, and usually they're like really short melodies. They're not really involved. They're very folksy, very short little ditties. And then I got excited about it because I thought to myself, well, if I can actually hear these melodies, I probably should be trying to remember them, So I would wake up and I'd be trying to sing these melodies into my phone. Of course, I'm waking up my wife and I'm hearing these melodies, or sometimes I'm in the car or something, and I get like this idea, and usually it just kind of reoccurs, and I'm like, oh man, I gotta somehow save that, because once I, go on to do whatever in the day, I just forget it. I can't remember it anymore. So with these tunes, they're all tunes that I sung into my phone, and then later on I went down to my basement and I just wrote them out. and then I would write like, secondary phrases that kind of made them really like complete ideas, But yeah, these were all just sort of folk tunes from my basement, and hopefully, um, I'm hoping that too, that they sound really clear to the listener. I want it to be that they can actually leave the club tonight and actually sing some of the tunes. You know what I mean?
Cool.
So
When you talk about having the gift of an idea, first thing in the morning, does the tune pretty much resemble that thing that you heard and sung, or does it, or is that the entry point and it gets developed from there?
No, that's pretty much it. And I am a big fan of melodies having a suggested harmony. Like sometimes, or at least that's the way I tend to hear melodies. Like I'll hear a melody and it'll be really clear what the like what kind of harmony you can put behind it. And like on that tune, Rolling Thunder, like I didn't really have to think of a progression necessarily. It just sounds like it. Boop, boop, ba-do, boop, boop, boo-do, dee-dum. Right. So that when you're on that major third like that, okay. Let's back to the one chord. Dee-da, boom, be-da-da, dee-da-dum. Down to the 5 chord. And then maybe at the end, maybe there's some questioning about what that could be. But the rest of the tune it's a very simple little melody. And I think when people listen to jazz, I think for the most part, the complexity, maybe other musicians can understand what that means, but I think the average listener, they go more for how it feels, And for those listeners who may not know, I just finished my doctorate, and I did it on this topic, focus of attention and affect in jazz listening experiences. And I found that most people, when they listen to jazz, they tend to listen to sort of the rhythm, the feeling of it. And if you ask people about it, they won't say, well, I love when you did that, that 2-5-1 in minor. They won't refer to that, but they'll just say stuff like, oh yeah, that reminds me of my dad, because he used to play tunes that sound like New York, or that reminds me of, church music, or that reminds me. Even you said, Bix, when you were listening to that early, say it's kind of like a gospel bluesy kind of thing,
Well, the Rolling Thunder, definitely.
The Rolling Thunder, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so I was thinking how people hear like that. And so when I had these melodies, I thought, okay, that's kind of like what I want people to hear. I want them to hear a melody that they could actually sort of build their own meaning into it. They could sort of construct meaning in something that's, a very simple little tune, but that it would be simple enough that they could sing along with it. And as we all know, participation from the audience, if they can understand it, they can sort of participate, whether mentally or singing it or tapping it or or just following it and knowing, okay, there's going to be a like a downbeat here, oh man, there's going to be a resolution over there, the music is going to release, it's going to relax when that happens. So I think that helps. And I think it opens the door for people who may not like jazz to start liking it. So many times you hear people and you say, "Hey, do you like jazz?" And well, I don't know if I like jazz. And then they have a lot of different interpretations of what jazz is. But then you play them, maybe like a Horace Silver recording, and they say, "That's jazz? I love that."
Yeah, right.
So, yeah, I think that's the direction I was trying to head in, and so yeah, this is a good starting place. And as the quartet trio, we're hoping that this will be one of many recordings, and hence the name Introducing Quartet Trio. But yeah, we'll see how it develops. I think we have a really great performance rapport. The recording was very intuitive. Like there are times when I just knew, okay, it's time to come back in now, or okay, let him play a little bit longer. And I think just the structure of the trio sort of lends itself to that too. It just feels looser, like you don't feel as much like, oh, we got to hold this thing together. It's more like an open canvas that you can just sort of explore on, and then you can add structure, to close the tune out. So
Going back to the singability and connecting with an audience, is this something that, as a teacher, that you fold into your teaching?
Oh yeah. So as a teacher, when students come for lessons and they say, "Well, I want to learn jazz," in my mind, I always think of that as, well, you're saying you want to learn jazz, but the truth is you really want to learn how to play form, you know. So I've had quite a few students where, they come in and they think, well, I have to learn a bunch of scales and I have to really know theory and harmony. And I do think that you do have to learn that stuff, but I think that a beginner is not going to learn all that stuff. The beginner is going to be so preoccupied with, am I playing the right notes or not, And so typically when I'm teaching, I don't even tell the students the harmony. I say, okay, here's the melody and just play the melody. And then before we talk about chords and progressions and all that stuff, I'll say, well, okay, now play the melody and add your own thing to it. Like improvise the melody, actually embellish the melody, see if you can play the melody and just add like a little twist to it. All right, good. And so at that point, when they can do that much, I'll say, okay, we're ready to play. You play that in the concert like that. And they'll be like, what? I'm not really, but they are, because what'll happen is they'll sort of stumble into something and then they'll say, what is that? And I'll say, oh, okay, you're actually playing the seventh of a dominant seventh chord. That's a dominant seventh chord, and it goes like this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so then they every time they come to that place, they play their dominant seventh chord. And then they'll stumble into something else, and they say, well, what is that? Oh, okay, that's a half diminished chord. Half diminished chord is like a really groovy chord. Like not a lot of musicians even know, how to play on a half diminished chord, but this is what it is, And so the more they do it, the more they feel like, I'm actually doing this. I'm participating already, And it's not something that requires more knowledge necessarily, but just more understanding of, okay, I can actually end a phrase, I can begin a phrase, I can peak the phrase, I can use stuff that I know how to do already. I can play with dynamics, I can play with range, I can play with timbre, I can change my voice around, I can, you know what I mean? So they begin to do stuff like that. And once they realize that they're playing with expression, then they want to know more, So we have a blast. And most of my students, once they finished, their 4 years there, they always kind of regretfully say, man, I wish I could just continue to play. And I always wish that I had like a budget where I could just hire all of them, where we could just go out and play, But yeah, we've had some very meaningful experiences. And by the way, this is the time I should make a shameless plug for Indiana Wesleyan University in Marion, Indiana. So come check us out, or apply for the school, or yeah, come on out.
Come study with Todd
Yeah,
Williams,
come study
man.
with Todd Williams. Yeah.
Very cool. So do you have more gigs on the horizon with Quartet
With
Trio?
Quartet Trio, at this point, we don't have like a lineup of gigs. But if you're listening and you like what you hear, give me a ring and I'm sure we can organize something. Uh, yeah, right now, we're just kind of getting things going, but yeah, I'm looking forward to a lot of gigs with these guys. I'm hoping to get invited back to Smalls. I mean, we're there tonight, but I'm hoping that can turn into like a series of gigs, and so we'll see.
Yeah, and I mean, for all the playing that you've done all over the world, you mentioned to me this is your first time at Smalls,
Oh,
and
right, yeah,
that
that's
you
right.
went to high school
High school with
with
Spike
Spike
Wheeler.
Wheeler,
That's
the
right,
proprietor.
man.
That's
So
pretty cool.
yeah, that's a fun perk to this whole scenario is that so my buddy Spike, who now he is the owner of not only Smalls but Mesro, and I just found that to be such a funny experience to know that one of your friends not only uh, plays jazz in New York, but he owns not one, but two really visible jazz clubs, which is that's like unheard of for the same person to do that, you know. But he's doing a great job, and he's done a lot, I think, for jazz in New York because a lot of younger players have gotten their start down at Smalls, and he's totally, he's totally committed to this. I think he's just the right person for it. And I remember the days when he had gone to New York to study at the New School, and I was going to Eastman, and my friend Peter Martin was going to Juilliard, and there were the whole clique of St. Louis musicians. We kind of sort of left St. Louis and were going on to other things outside of town. And I remember his enthusiasm about just kind of hanging in the village and playing and all of that. And so his experience over the years, just meeting people and making connections, has made him really sort of like the mayor of jazz in downtown in the village, so I'm excited about it. It'll be good to see him again. I haven't seen him in several years. And but yeah, we had a history of playing jazz in his living room and eating his food and hanging out. And I knew his dad and knew his mom and his family and everybody. So yeah, we have a lot of fond memories.
Very cool. Before I let you go, what's the scene in Indianapolis like these days?
Okay.
Your relationship with that? Are you active, as a player in addition to teaching there?
Well, to be honest with you, most of my playing is usually I get called to do gigs outside of Indianapolis. So I usually travel and play when I do play. And then, but I will say that the scene there is very vibrant. There are at least three club type venues that are very active with people playing. The Chatterbox, the Slippery Noodle, and the Jazz Kitchen. I think the Chatterbox may have
Chatterbox.
been the one that
That's
you
the
were
one I
trying to
was
think
trying to
of.
think of. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's still going strong, and then there are a number of venues, one of which I've had kind of a relationship with, which is strong on education, which is the Palladium. And recently, they've asked me to be their spokesperson for an online radio show called Jazz Talk, and that's been very cool. Just being able to, and basically what that means is I meet all the musicians who play at that venue every time they have a jazz season. And so I get to meet the musicians. And recently it was Matthew Whitaker, and I've of course interviewed Wynton and played on the concert when the LCJO came through. In addition, the Brubeck brothers, and got a chance to play with those guys and go off and do a road gig with them. And it's kind of a fun setup.
Yeah, cool.
Get to do a lot of jazz stuff. So I can't say I'm constantly on the road, but I do go out and play gigs, and then I do the teaching, and then I get the summers available to do stuff like this.
It's very cool.
Hmm.
Where can a listener check out the Palladium show? Where?
Oh, okay. Yeah, the Palladium show is on their website. I think they keep some of the interviews posted. Go to the Center Presents. Um, I don't know if they're a .com or a .org, but if you just put in the Center Presents in Carmel, Indiana, you'll find their website, and you'll find lots of different programming and those interviews that I did with Jazz Talk. I think you'll find it to be very informative and a lot of fun.
Very cool. The record is Introducing the Quartet Trio.
Woo,
Todd Williams.
Quartet Trio!
Yeah, looking forward to checking out the music tonight, man.
Thanks a lot, Dave. I appreciate it.
Thank you for your time, bro.
Yeah.
Take care, man.
Bye-bye.
Liner Notes is grateful for the support of Van Doren Reeds and Mouthpieces. Be sure and check out the Van Doren Advisory Studio in New York City for all your sound sculpting needs. Liner Notes is grateful for the support of Arlen's Good Beer in Bowling Green, Ohio. Sound by Marco Mendoza. The theme music is No FOMO, Mofo by yours truly. Produced by David Bixler. Be sure and subscribe to Liner Notes wherever you find your podcasts. If you like what you hear, I ask that you consider supporting Liner Notes financially. You can do this by going to the Liner Notes tab at davidbixler.com. Thank you for your consideration.